Most people think AI is a chatbot. You type something, you get an answer back. It's like a fancy autocomplete or a faster Google search. But those people are only using 1% of AI's current capabilities. I started using Claude Code over 1 year ago before it went mainstream, and I realized this is not a chatbot. This is the closest thing I've ever experienced to an AI employee. I type one word, it can find my latest TikTok draft videos, transcribe them all, write platform-specific captions, include comment keywords for my DM automations, checks its own work against my brand voice and style guideline, publishes to 8 different social media platforms, and updates my Airtable, and then it creates the DM automations in ManyChat, all from one command, which I'm going to start with. This is not a chatbot conversation we're talking about. This is using AI for key business operations. This tutorial, I'm going to talk about every important Claude Code concept explained for normal people, entrepreneurs, business owners. We're not going to be talking about building apps or vibe coding. This is for you if you are just trying to figure out how to use AI to be more productive. I'm going to break it down, and it's going to be very comprehensive, but it's going to start with what even is this? How do I install? What is this terminal thing? And then we're going to go all the way to skills, hooks, memory, MCP servers, and more. Now, you don't need to start with everything I'm going to show you today. You just need to get it up and running and run like a couple commands. But I promise, like after 30 days of just digesting this tutorial, you will wonder how you lived without Claude Code, 100% guaranteed. So the very first thing we're going to do is talk about the terminal. So you may have heard this word a lot. It scares people. I have my terminal open here on the right-hand side. It looks intimidating. It's like a black screen, blank. Sometimes there's a blinking cursor. There's no menus, no buttons or anything, but it's really, really powerful. So because once you start getting used to this, instead of clicking through 15 different browser tabs and copying text around, you can just tell Claude Code in plain English what you want it to do. And it has access to your local computer, your files. It can read your files, edit your files, write your files, create new files. It has access to the entire internet. So most people watching this, you usually don't have to install a terminal. One comes pre-installed. So if you're on Mac, open Launchpad, where you can see all of your applications, and start typing terminal, and there should be one already installed. I have another variation called iTerm. It doesn't matter. Just type terminal, hit enter, and it should open. On Windows, search for command prompt, and it should open. And it should basically look like this. I know it looks a little bit scary, but it's worth it, and there will be other options for how to use Claude Code that I will dive into later. And then once we're here, what we're going to do is create our practice folder. So I'm just going to teach you some basic commands because it's really confusing if you don't know these 2 commands at least. So ls will just list the stuff in your current folder. So, okay. So it's basically just a text-based version of navigating your file system. The next command is cd. This means you're going to change into a specific folder. In my case, I'm going to go into my dev folder. This is the equivalent of just clicking here. It's not anything crazy we're doing. We're just clicking into a folder. I have a folder called dev where I organize all of my projects, including technical and non-technical projects. Okay, and then what we're going to do, honestly, you could do this in Finder. You could create new folder, or I'll just show you real quick how to do it in the terminal. So that's mk dir, this is make directory. And then I want you to make one called playground. I already have one, but what this is going to do is just create a new folder called playground. And that's what we're going to use today for all of our Claude Code stuff. So go ahead and click enter, and that should make that directory. And then you want to cd into that directory. CD, I think, is change directory. So all we're doing is navigating into that folder. And you can see which folder you're in with this thing here, dev/playground, super straightforward here. Okay, cool. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually install Claude. These are the commands to install it for Mac or Linux or Windows. I always recommend going to the official documentation, right? So that would be code.claude.com/docs/en for English/quickstart. Which is kind of long, so let me just expand this. So this is the link for the most up-to-date documentation. It goes into a little bit more detail, but you can just run this command and it will install Claude Code immediately. So if you're on Mac or Linux, run this one. If you're on Windows, run this one. So this is bluish purple, and then here, right, that's the command. And then let's talk about pricing real quick, because a lot of people ask me about that. So there are different Claude plans, and I think the biggest complaint for Claude in general versus ChatGPT and other providers is its pricing. Because honestly, if you're on the Pro plan, $20 per month, you have to be really careful with token usage and your context window. Otherwise, you eat into this very, very quickly. I'm going to show you techniques to reduce your context usage and stuff, but just keep that in mind. I will say though, like, if you're a business owner, you're going to use this every single day, and it's going to automate so much work like you won't even believe it. I would personally not even think twice about paying for the $100 per month plan. I have personally been on the $200 per month plan since it came out, and I am perfectly happy with it. I have canceled many other AI subscriptions as a result because you just don't need them anymore. Claude Code is so versatile. Okay, so if you're not sure if you're going to continue with this, you can start with the Pro $20 per month plan, but I just want to set realistic expectations. Once you get through this tutorial, you're going to be using it heavily for like so many different use cases across your company, and don't think twice about just biting the bullet and going for the $100 per month plan. So here are the commands again to install it. So Mac/Linux, here's the command. And then here it is for Windows. And again, you can always get the most up-to-date installation instructions just by going to code.claude.com. Honestly, you can ask ChatGPT, like, how do I install Claude Code? And it will walk you through it. It's nothing crazy. And then we talked about pricing. So 100 per month or 200 per month. I would say start with 100 per month. And then as your usage ramps up, you'll probably get on the $200 per month plan. Okay, so once you've installed it, type Claude, and then it should look like this in your terminal. It should say, welcome here. If this is your very first time, you will have to sign in. So when you type Claude, it'll be like log into your account, and then it will redirect you to the Claude.ai website where you're going to approve and then sign in. Honestly, you can make it with Finder as well, right? Like it's just a folder. So this will just make a folder called Playground, okay? And then once you make it, you just cd change directory into that folder. All we're doing is making a folder and going into it. And what this means is Claude is going to treat this folder as like our playground, our workspace where we're going to create files. Once we add rules to this project, we'll have project-specific rules for this playground, as well as global rules that are applied to all projects. But I personally organize all of my stuff in different projects. So just to show you guys, ls is to list the stuff in a directory. So I have different projects, one for my app, one for prototypes. Claude Max is a variation of Emacs. Content is where I have all of my content related stuff. N8N Blotato is like my custom N8N node for Blotato. These are my help docs. This is my keyboard configuration. And then Playground is the one that we just made. So I'm going to go back to Playground and then type Claude. Okay, so now we're here. And then the very first thing we're going to do is ask, what are you and what do you have access to on my computer? Give me the 30-second version. This is a habit that I recommend for everybody interacting with AI tools, because like so often I see people's knee-jerk reaction is to find a tutorial or YouTube video that like exactly answers what they're trying to do. But you can actually just ask AI. You can just ask Claude Code, like, what are the different things you can do? Can you walk me through it? So here it says I can read, edit, create files. I can run commands. I can search stuff. I have access to the web. I can scrape stuff. I can do workflow automations. And then this is related to my specific permissions. Like I told it, don't delete anything accidentally because I have a bad habit of just completely deleting stuff accidentally, etc. Okay. So that's habit number one, ask it to do that. And the next thing we're going to learn is file access. So the very first thing Claude said is I can read, edit, and create files in this computer and this directory. So what I want to show real quick is one of the things I can do because I have skills set up and file system access and all of that. You don't have to do anything for this. I'm just demoing how it works. So for example, I'm going to go to another project, actually. I'm going to go into my content project and run Claude there. And then I have all these different skills, but I'm just going to show you one as an example of how it works. This is called cross-post. So cross-post looks for videos in my Google Drive that are completed TikTok drafts. It transcribes them, and then it writes platform-specific captions, updates my Airtable, waits for my approval, and then schedules that one short-form video to 8 different platforms. So if I just say /crosspost latest video, the reason I'm showcasing this is to showcase the overall power of Claude Code once you get it set up. So what it's doing is, first it's testing that I have the ability to transcribe stuff, the ability to schedule stuff to social media. Now it's checking my Google Drive. That's why it says G Drive here. And it's true, all of my latest videos have already been posted. That's why it's saying no videos in draft status here. It's going to ask me all of these things. It's checking my Airtable now for like, did I post the videos and stuff like that? So here, no videos are, well, because I've already done all of the videos, but I'm just going to tell it to cross-post latest video anyway. So a lot happened actually here. So as I typed the cross-post skill, it checked my Google Drive. It looked for new videos I haven't uploaded yet. It cross-referenced it with my Airtable, which is where I keep a master list of like, here are all the videos I posted. Here are my drafts ready to go. And then it gave me a summary of like, well, all your videos are done. So what do you want me to do next? So that's why I said cross-post the latest video anyway. So Claude Code is now taking a video from my Google Drive, transcribing it locally with AI. It costs $0 because it's happening on my computer. Now it's spawning a Subagent, right? This is transcribing the video and generating platform-specific captions, including keywords for DM automations for Instagram and Facebook. This part's going to take a little bit because it's actually transcribing the video. Other cool things you can see here is it's like thinking with high effort. You're going to learn how we can change that and stuff. And then you can also do things like run this in the background by pressing Control B, but I'm not going to do that right now. Yeah, so now it had already finished transcribing the video, and now it's generating captions based on reading my platform constraints, my philosophy file, and other templates of captions I've written in the past. That's what that message said. This validation is actually really funny. So this is my quality gate is what I call it. It's basically a hook. So when it's done writing captions, it has to check for like banned words that I never allow it to use, M dashes and things like that. Just stuff that I never want AI to write, like just like words like delve, like is a banned word. And so this is really cool. It does it automatically. So after it writes the captions, it looks for my quality check, and you can see here banned words, and then it fixes them. So it's really smart about this. And then it outputs a plan here in plan.md. And I'll show you how to look at the plan later, but for now I just wanted to show, yes, but schedule only to TikTok in, let's just say April 15th, because it's really far away. And now what it's going to do is use Blotato MCP to schedule the post for TikTok. Normally, this one skill schedules it to 8 platforms instead of just TikTok, but I'm just going to show one platform. It has another check before it posts. It checks again that the captions are good to go. That says validation passed, all captions clean. And now it's going to schedule this video to TikTok at this date. And this was all done through chat. So like if you are used to using ChatGPT, you honestly can't do anything like this in ChatGPT. The reason it was able to schedule it to social media is because it's linked to this MCP tool, Blotato, that allows the scheduling. Okay, so now the agent is done. It summarized it. It also has a final step to rename the file. So it's a nice file name like this. I can reference it later. And if there was an Airtable record, it would update it as well, because that's where I store all of my videos. And so I wanted to show that as an example of what we're going to build towards, right? It was able to do this because it it combined file access, right? It looked for the video in my Google Drive, which is local. It transcribed it locally on my computer with AI. It wrote the captions. It created a plan that I could review before it does anything. And then it called an external tool to go ahead and schedule the video for later. And so it's all in one scale / cross post. Normally, I don't have to like write extra things. I just say / cross post all the videos I dropped in today, and then it's done. And then I just review for any last minute changes, and then it schedules everything out. Okay, so if you're set up, hopefully with Claude Code, what I want you to do next is type something like this, analyze the latest document in my downloads folder. Now, if you don't have a CSV in your downloads folder, this one might be tough. So you might change it to analyze latest image or something else in your downloads folder. But here I wanted to showcase what it looks like for Claude Code to access your file system. So we're going to type that. And for me, I actually downloaded a CSV of customer support feedback that I recently got from a survey. It says, oh, the file is large, but now it's going to analyze it and break it down. Okay, so here's the analysis. So we're taking a CSV locally on my computer, having Claude analyze it. We didn't have to drag and drop the file to a web interface. We didn't have to copy paste the CSV data anywhere. Claude just knows where to go in your computer to be able to do this. Now, Claude can not only read files, it can also edit and create files. So now, hang on, I think I'm in my other project. So I'm going to go back to Playground so I'm consistent with everybody, because I wanted to create the file in Playground. Okay. I'm going to ask it again to analyze this. And then I'm going to say, then create a file containing your analysis. The cow is actually a hook, which I will show you guys how to do later. So a hook is like when something happens with Claude Code, you can trigger something else to happen. So let's say Claude Code is done thinking. You can have a hook that notifies you and also plays a sound to alert you. So I have a hook on my Mac, so it shows like a little notification thing in the upper right corner, but it's showing on my other monitor, and also to play the mooing sound. And I'll show you guys how to set that up. So when we get to the hook section. Okay, so now we have Claude Code analyze the CSV, and now it created the file. So we haven't installed VS Code yet, but you can see the file if you open up Finder. So let's go to Playground, okay? So remember we made the directory Playground, the folder Playground. Now it's here, support, survey, analysis. I'm gonna open it with Visual Studio Code, and here's the analysis, boom. Well, I will zoom out. But yeah, do this exercise with whatever file you actually have in your downloads folder. Obviously, if you don't have a CSV, that'll be harder. But let's say you have a Word doc. Let's say you have like an image. It can also analyze an image, etc. Okay. And the next section is images and PDFs. So besides text, Claude Code can also see images, screenshots, diagrams, whatever you want to drop in there. So what you're going to do next is take a screenshot of anything, for example, a website, and then ask Claude, like literally, what do you see? So to do this, just literally go to any website and just take a screenshot. If you have photos lying around, you can also do that. I am just going to take a screenshot of my Blotato website and then drop it into Claude Code, and then literally just ask it to describe what the image is. Okay, hang on. I'm just going to expand this and do it here real quick. And then I'm just going to say, what is this? You can drop multiple images, by the way. So if you have multiple photos or multiple images describing an issue, you can just drop it in here, and Claude Code will be able to see what you're looking at. Even error messages, like if it's difficult to copy paste an error message, I literally just screenshot it and then drop it into Claude Code. Okay. Okay, so now let's get to actual real tasks. So this is the part where you're going to see the biggest difference between Claude Code versus ChatGPT or conversational AI. Claude Code is not just for talking. Yes, you can ask it all the same things you ask ChatGPT, but its most important differentiator is that it acts on your behalf. It can work. It can read files, it can edit documents, it can run commands on your computer, it can search your folders, it can research the entire internet, and it can connect to the apps you use, such as Notion, Airtable, Intercom, anything else, anything that has an MCP or an API. Every single action that it takes is basically a tool call. So that's the concept tool, if you hear about that in context of Claude Code. So one tool is like searching the internet or web fetch or web search. Another tool is reading files. Another tool is writing files. The tools are built into Claude Code. And then if you've heard of MCP, Model Context Protocol, we're going to cover this a lot later, but MCP lets you add even more tools by connecting external apps like Airtable, Google Drive, and Slack. So tools are what Claude does on your computer, and then MCP refers to external tools on the internet that Claude can also operate on. Okay, so now what I want you to do is paste this into Claude Code. Okay, this is a fun one. Boom. Look through my downloads folder and list every file by type, and create a new file, summary.md, with your organization suggestions. Show me each step as you go. Okay, so we pasted that in here. It's literally listing each step, what it's doing, listing all the files in my downloads folder, getting the complete listing, categorizing by file type. Okay, step 4 is creating a summary. It now wrote a new file, downloads_summary, and then it provided the summary as well here in the terminal. Okay, so let's go open that file, downloads_summary. Since we haven't installed Visual Studio Code yet, you can just go to the folder here and then open it with whatever you happen to have. If you don't have anything installed, it might just be like Notepad or text or something. But yeah, so here is the summary of it. So it analyzes all my random stuff in downloads, and then just gave me a breakdown in organization, folder structure to create, ongoing habits, space impact. I have a bunch of duplicate screenshots apparently, blah, 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 and recommendations for organization. So here all we're demoing is like all the different tool calls that it did. Like it searched through my downloads folder, it listed every file, it wrote a new file summary with organization suggestions, and each of those actions is a tool call. Okay, so it went from reading to then thinking about the problem. How do I best organize this? What's my suggestion? And then writing its final plan into this other file. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about are just some pro tips talking to Claude Code, so like basic prompt engineering. As you guys know, if you've followed me a long time, it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. If you don't supply a lot of useful context to AI, then the answers you get are going to be very generic. And there are a lot of tricks to that, a lot of prompt engineering templates. A couple things I'll talk about is that you can reference specific files just by typing like this @ here. So in the terminal, type @ you're going to see a list of like a bunch of files, and then you can reference them. So let's say I want to reference my support survey, the CSV we analyzed earlier. And I just want to say, what is this? Like, I don't know what the file is. So that's a neat way to narrow the context or supply the context that's necessary. You can @ multiple files. Say you're doing some kind of analysis and you want to include only 3 specific files, you can just type @ and then tag those files, and Claude Code will analyze just those files in the context. Okay. And then the other trick that I personally love, so I do this one all of the time because I'm actually super lazy writing prompts. That's why this works so well. So I'll zoom in again so you can copy it. So this prompt is basically so you can type whatever task you want here. This is just an example. I need you to write a cold email to a local pet store pitching a partnership. This is what I like to add at the end. Although this is a little bit wordy. I might rewrite this. Okay, so this last part is what I add. Ask me clarifying questions, and one at a time until you're 95% confident you can complete the task. I use this all the time in like many different contexts, and it's a really great way to just throw out the general task you want, and then you refine the context interactively back and forth with AI. So go ahead and paste that into the terminal, and now Claude is going to ask you a bunch of questions one at a time. So question one is, what company or product or service are you representing in this partnership pitch? So write a cold email to a local pet store pitching. Let's say I'm a positive dog trainer. Okay. Let's do number one. What specific partnership are we proposing? Number one. Let's say training classes. What type of training classes? Let's say all of the above, but with positive techniques. I like a 60-40 split. So you can answer the questions whatever you want, but my point here is just illustrating the process. Like when I am not really sure yet what is the most important context, this helps me clarify it interactively with AI. Like here, I didn't even specify if the 60% goes to me or the store. Like that's good context to have. So this is just basic prompt engineering. This applies to ChatGPT, Claude Code, Gemini, DeepSeek, whatever you're doing. Let's say I'm not sure. 5+ years, no credentials. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Maybe boost reputation? It's asking a lot of questions. Let's just say generic template email. Let's say meet in person. Casual, friendly. Keep it business focused. So you're going to get a ton of questions like this, especially if you provided zero context on the task, right? Like we were just like, write an email. It knows nothing about anything we do, not even our name. Let's just say pet positive. Best phone number. I'll just say I'll fill that out later. Only positive methods. Okay, last question. Not sure. Keep it general. And then I'm going to show you how to take all of this context that we just filled out and make sure Claude remembers it so we don't have to do that ever again. But so here's the email. Remember, the original task was writing a cold email to a local pet store pitching a partnership. And Claude knows nothing about this context, right? Because we started a new project. If you just installed Claude, it knows nothing about who you are. So whatever task you put here, it's probably going to ask you a bunch of clarifying questions, just like it did with me. And go ahead and answer them, because what we're going to do is next codify that knowledge, right? So now we have the email after it asked me a ton of clarifying questions. And the next thing we want to do is personalize and teach Claude so that we don't have to answer those same questions again. So that's where Claude.md files come in. It's basically like the instruction manual for each project. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I personally have like multiple different projects. So my instruction manual for content creation looks very different than my instruction manual for coding, and that looks very different than my instruction manual for updating my help docs. So the Claude.md file, it's kind of like a living document. Claude reads it every time the session starts. So every time you start a Claude session within Playground, it's going to read the Claude.md file that is in Playground. And so it's like the instruction manual. It can contain what the project is about. It can contain like your rules and preferences, what tools you like using, etc. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. So instead of having to repeat all of this every single time, now we can create this Claude.md file. So go ahead and copy this and paste it here. Create a Claude.md file based on everything you've learned about my preferences and how I work. I'm going to skip the ask me clarifying questions about anything critical. Otherwise, it's going to ask me 20 more questions. But for your use case, to really set this up on a project basis, it is a really nice shortcut to just have Claude ask you clarifying questions and continuously write the Claude.md file. One pro trick I like is after every long session, I have a skill/learn that makes Claude reflect on the conversation and update the Claude.md file with important learnings and takeaways so that I don't have to go down the same rabbit hole or explain something again, explain why Claude did something wrong. It will just remember it for next time. Okay, so now it created the Claude.md file. So go to the project. And now you can see the Claude.md file here. So go ahead and open that with whatever you can open it with. You probably don't have Visual Studio Code yet. We will get to that. But here are the project-specific preferences, okay? Boom, okay, for this Claude.md file. And then that's just the start of the Claude.md file. So one common mistake people make is they just make it once and then never update it. But I like to personally update it almost on a daily basis, for sure on a weekly basis. So I'll show you a real Claude.md file. So if I go to content, if I go to this Claude.md file, I'm going to zoom out a little bit because it's really hard to see. So this is really, really long and extensive, but it contains like basically everything I need Claude to know to help me make content. It's like autonomy rules, content quality. I have extra checks for that, but these are like important guidelines. Caption types when I'm cross-posting. For example, I'm actually okay with the caption the same on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. However, the comments automation, so DM me to get this lead magnet, that needs to be different for Instagram and Facebook. And then tweets are different, like Threads, Twitter, and Blue Sky are different from TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. And then Substack is a whole other different thing. So that has its own section here. Blah, blah, blah. Platform character limits, making sure my Airtable is clean, using Subagents for parallel contents creation, blah, blah, blah. Brand voice. So this tells Claude where to look for different brand voice templates. For example, I have like a compilation of viral tweets, and that serves as viral templates that Claude can use for inspiration. So just lots and lots of different pieces of information here. So that's like a real Claude.md file, and you'll have one that's that extensive, but you just have to continuously update your Claude.md file over time. Like this is just our very first one for this playground project. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is plan mode. So you may have heard of this concept. There are different modes, so it's very hard to see probably, but at the bottom of your terminal, if you press Shift Tab, you will actually cycle through the different modes. So the default mode will generally ask for your permission before editing anything. However, that can get like kind of annoying. So a lot of people actually will leave it on except edits on. So this means it's just going to edit stuff automatically. You don't have to give it permission every time. The other mode is called plan mode. And I personally spend most of my time in plan mode for critical tasks. For example, if I'm coding, adding features to the product, I will spend like 90% of my time planning what that looks like, going back and forth with Claude. And then only when I'm happy with the plan, I will switch to edits automatically mode. It's like getting a proposal from a contractor before they start demolishing your kitchen. I know it seems tedious, but spending a lot of time in plan mode just saves you so much time later on. Without plan mode, Claude can go down the wrong rabbit hole. It might accidentally edit files in a way that you don't want, but with plan mode, you can just review everything before it does it. Okay, so if you haven't yet, click Shift Tab to cycle through the different modes. So like I said, the default mode is it's going to ask you all the time for permission, but that can be tedious after a while. And so again, I like to do plan mode first, spend a lot of time there, and then switch it to accept edits automatically after we're set with the plan. So let's switch to plan mode. So here's the exercise. Switch to plan mode and then copy this in. Reorganize all the files in my downloads folder into subfolders by file type. Okay, and leave plan mode on. So let's see what Claude Code does. Okay, so Claude Code is, again, searching for the files. It's going to create the plan. I'm just going to say skip interview and plan immediately, but I will talk about this really quick. I'm glad this popped up. So sometimes Claude Code will be like not sure what to do. So it's going to ask you clarifying questions, and you can type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and it's just going to accept it. Number 4, it says type something. So this is where you can type like whatever feedback, right, that you want. Or if you want to just skip this interview and plan immediately, you can type number 6. Okay, so here's the plan, okay? So what we're doing here is like testing the different modes. So we switch to plan mode, and then you can see Claude outputted like a really detailed plan first, and you can chat back and forth like, I don't like the plan. And here are some presets. So you can clear the context, meaning clear the context window, and then continue. You can just continue without clearing the context window. You can manually approve the edits each time, or if you have like a lot more feedback, you can type it here. I'm going to say auto accept edits number 2. And again, you can just type 2 and it's going to, oh, well, not for that one, but if you just type 2 there, then it's going to automatically select number 2. Okay, so now it's going to move forward with the plan. I actually don't want it to organize my stuff right now, though. So I just interrupted it. By the way, to interrupt, you can just press your escape key, and that will stop Claude Code from doing whatever it's doing. So if it's doing the wrong thing, or you just want it to switch to something else, type escape, and that will interrupt it. So it will say interrupted here. So yeah, that's plan mode. So you can see the plan like that, and it's really nice. You can go back and forth on the plan before it does anything. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about this concept of context window, which you may be familiar with even from using ChatGPT. The best analogy I could come up with is it's like a whiteboard, like when I do my whiteboard sessions. So everything it does, every file it reads, every response it gives you all goes on the whiteboard. And it's a big whiteboard, but it's not an infinite whiteboard. There's limited space. And the problem is, just like in my vibe coding sessions, when I just like have a ton of stuff on the whiteboard and like someone new comes in and they're like, I don't know what to focus on. Like, I don't know what's important anymore. That's because like the context window is filling up with content, and it can be difficult for AI to distinguish which information is actually important out of all of this information you've provided. And that's why a lot of people notice the answers get worse when your context window gets really large, when you have like a super long conversation and Claude has been doing so many different things, and it's kind of lost track of what is most important that you've talked about. And so one way to check, so if you're on the non-max plan, you can check your usage for your overall context just by doing /usage, but it also shows you your usage as you get close to it. It'll say down here like, 70% of context used up. And so you'll see that down here. And there are different ways to manage that. So this next section, tokens and cost management, these are all related. So, the more context you have, like the more expensive it is, because you're sending a bunch more information every single time you interact with Claude Code. So if you're concerned about cost, like if you're on the $20 per month plan, do /usage, and then you'll see your plan limits, right? Current session, current week, then you'll see the status, etc., usage. And that's where you can keep track of it, especially if you're on the $20 per month plan or even the $100 per month plan. I'm going to talk real quick about a couple ways to keep that context down, your token usage down. So one trick is to switch to a cheaper model. So I was going to get to this next, but if you type /model, you can choose different models. So I was using Haiku just because it's faster for the purpose of this demo. Normally in my day-to-day work, I'm using Opus 4.6 until I'm close to the limits. Then I'll switch to Sonnet because it's like pretty good still. A lot of people, if they're on the $20 per month plan, you'll use Opus 4.6 for technical tasks where you need the most brain power, Sonnet for everyday tasks, and Haiku for just like really simple stuff. Okay. I'm going to switch it back to default. Okay, so that's one way to save on your token usage, and you just switch to a lower tier model. Another way is to clear the context between tasks. So if you type /clear, this will clear the conversation history that we've just had and free up context. So just do that /clear, and now this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so it freed up all of that context. And what's nice is that saves tokens because then you're not sending like everything we ever talked about to Claude every single time. Another way to save tokens is to compact your session. So I probably should have shown that first, but if you type /compact, it will clear your conversation history, but keep a summary of it. Now, you don't have to do this manually. If you're approaching your limit, Claude Code will just compact the conversation automatically. So you don't have to do compact manually. My personal workflow is if I'm done with a key task and I'm moving on to another key task, I almost always clear context. I've just found better performance because it's like that whiteboard analogy. Like if you have a ton of crap on the whiteboard, someone's looking at it and like doesn't know what is the actual important information here. So I personally clear context quite frequently every time I am switching tasks. And then this is a more advanced recommendation, but there are plugins now that make that basically reduce context, that reduce the usage significantly, especially if you're using MCP tools. So I'm not going to actually do this, but for anyone who's advanced. So yeah, the website is github.com/mksglu/context-mode. And people have reported like anywhere from 60 to 90% reduction in token usage when using MCP tools using this free MCP or this free plugin. So I was going to type it into the chat if you are interested. This is a bit more advanced. It's super easy to install though. So like if you have been using Claude Code, I highly recommend installing this because it saves so much context. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so I kind of talked about this before, but the next concept is model selection. So we kind of talked about that before where you type /model and then you can choose between Opus, which is the smartest one that says default recommended. Sonnet is faster, still pretty capable. There's another Sonnet with a larger context window, but it's billed as extra usage, or Haiku. So what you can do too is you can switch in the middle of your conversation. You don't have to use the same model every single time. So if I'm doing some kind of analysis, maybe I want to keep Opus, the most capable, sophisticated model. If I'm asking what is like the weather tomorrow, or just like brainstorm something really basic, then I might want to switch to Haiku or Sonnet, which are simpler. And so you can change the model anytime in the conversation. Just type /model and then you can change it. Related to this concept, actually, I don't know if I'm going to talk about this. Yeah. Okay. So related to the concept of model is effort. So there's the model, which is like how it's like the most sophisticated model, but you can also change how hard that model thinks. So if you can see it on my screen, if you use the left and right arrows, you can change it to low effort, medium effort, high effort. So this is going to use the most sophisticated model, but low effort or medium effort or high effort. So you can set this at any point in the conversation depending on the task you want Claude Code to do. I'll be honest though, if you're new to Claude Code, like I would just recommend keeping it on default recommended and probably medium effort for most use cases, especially if you're not vibe coding, building products. But I wouldn't worry about switching the model unless you're creeping up on your usage limit and then you need to optimize it. I would just just stay at the default recommended best model. But yeah, we can compare it and try it out. So let's first switch to the top one, and let's do high effort for this one. Okay, so model high effort, and then we're going to say research Etsy shops selling handmade candles. I'm going to say don't use Perplexity because I have a Perplexity MCP that makes this like way easier. And then what we're going to do is compare the response we get from Opus 4.6 with high thinking versus switching to haiku. Okay, so here is its really detailed report using Opus Sonnet, the best model, and we put it at high thinking mode. So this was the output. Okay, so now let's change it to let's just change it to haiku number 4. Okay, and then actually I'm gonna start a new tab because like technically it kind of knows the context, but I want to be able to like compare it back and forth. Okay, let's do Claude. And let me switch to haiku. Okay. Oh, hang on. Let me say without using Perplexity. I'm going to get to this. I have a Perplexity MCP server. It's honestly one of my favorites. Okay, well, it can't even search the internet. Let's switch to a slightly better model on this one. Okay. Let's switch to Sonnet real quick. So that was haiku. Saying like, nope, can't do that. Okay, and here is the research from using Sonnet, and honestly, it's like pretty similar to using Opus. Like it's like it outputted tables, it gave sources and stuff, and so really for most tasks, especially non-technical tasks, like it's totally fine, right? Like here is that one, so you can kind of see them up here and down here, boom, and it's like almost identical, the outputs. Okay, so let me close this. Next thing I want to talk about is managing conversations. So I think we already talked about /compact, right? So if I wanted to compact this conversation, it's going to clear the history but keep a summary. Okay, so I'll just do that real quick so you can demo it. So if you want to follow along, just type /compact. And then we talked about /clear. So I personally use /clear often when I'm switching totally different tasks. The next thing I wanted to talk about is session management. So you can have a really long session and then continue it elsewhere. Let me just type something else, analyze CSV and downloads. But yeah, so the command to run here is Claude. You can do /resume. So if you exit this, let's say like I exit it now, okay, and then I launch Claude again. So I did /exit to exit, then Claude to launch it again. Now it's blank, right? But what if I want to resume the previous conversation we just had? Type /resume, and then this will ask you which conversation you want to resume. So the first one is the one that I was just doing. And the second one is the one that used Sonnet. Remember when we were comparing different models? So I'll just do this. And now it looks exactly the same as what it previously was because it's resuming the exact same conversation. So just because you close the terminal or whatever, you can always go back and resume that same conversation if you need. We also talked about permission modes and settings already. So that was like accept edits, plan mode and stuff. But it's definitely a good exercise to understand what it is. So this is a very simple prompt. So you can just say, show me my current settings and explain what each one does, then recommend the best defaults for a business owner who's been using Claude Code for only a day. We have settings and then we have different modes. I wasn't going to get that much into like the settings JSON files today, just because this is meant to be for normal people and you're probably not going to look at that for a while. But yeah, so if you are interested in learning more about permissions and settings, just run this prompt and then Claude Code will walk you through it. Oh, and then we covered effort levels, but one thing that is really cool with effort levels is Claude Code recently brought back this keyword called ultrathink. But what this does is instead of having to switch the model to like the highest effort model and the best model for a bunch of things in your conversation, if you want to just use the best possible thing in one prompt, you can just say ultra think. And then the next prompt you type, it'll go back to whatever model you chose. So let's say like your default model is Sonnet because you're just trying to save on tokens. You can use ultra think and it's going to use the highest possible settings. And then it's going to go back automatically to using Sonnet since you're trying to save tokens. And yeah, we already talked about effort level. So /model, and then again, just do left and right to toggle different effort levels. But I like ultra think, especially if you're doing non-technical stuff, right? Saving context, keep it on Sonnet. If you really need like a detailed analysis or something, use ultra think, and then it will just go back to using Sonnet. The next concept is interruption. If I go back to this, you can see it's working, right? It's saying composing, but let's say I want to stop. So I just press escape. Here it says escape to interrupt, just press it, and then it's going to stop doing it. So that's just really handy because like oftentimes Claude will go down the wrong rabbit hole and I don't want it to. And so I can just interrupt it. Now we finally get to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so the terminal is really nice. I like that you use the terminal just to give commands, but it's not great for reviewing Claude Code's work because you have to like open the file separately and then it's just multiple things open. And so many people use something like Visual Studio Code. It's a completely free tool. I like to describe it as a fancy Google Doc so that you and Claude Code can collaborate on files together. For example, this summary file. In Visual Studio Code, I can just highlight this and then tell Claude, hey, I want these changes. And it's aware of the lines I've highlighted. Like it's aware of the context that I'm saying I want changes in. So it's really a very powerful Google Doc, but it allows you to collaborate with Claude Code and easily review its work, especially if it's like a text-based output. So to install Claude Code, and honestly, I mean, you don't have to use Claude Code. Like if this is already too much for you, just stick to the terminal, right? You can just do this later in the future. Like everything we're going to do after this, you can still do in the terminal. But for those of you who are interested, you just go to code.visualstudio.com/download, and then you download Visual Studio Code. Okay, it's going to look something like this. Now I'm going to fully expand it so you can see it. It has different icons on the left. So once you install it, it's going to look empty. On this left sidebar, click extensions. And then you're going to search for Claude Code. Okay, click the first result. Just double check that it has millions of downloads so you don't accidentally download something else. And then click install. Once it's installed, you should see an orange icon like this. So when you hover over it, it says Claude Code open. Just go ahead and click that. And you can drag stuff around. So if you don't want this in the bottom, just drag it up here. Okay, if you want to split the screen, which is like a pretty common thing, go to view, editor layout, and then you can split it like any way you want. So 2 columns is pretty common, right? And then you can drag Claude Code here. You can actually put something else down here as well, or you can close this section. And then just real quick, items on the left sidebar. I know it's a lot. You don't really have to worry about anything except this one, Explorer. You can think of it as like your folder or finder. Like it shows you what project are we in. So here I have 2 workspaces open, Playground, which is the one we're working on, and then Content, just so you guys can see like what another project looks like. You can click these arrows, right, to collapse or expand them. It's really just like a folder system on the left sidebar. This is also really handy. So this is the Claude Code icon. And here you can see all of your local sessions as well as your web-based Claude sessions. If you want to change your theme, go to Code, Settings, Themes, Color Theme, and then you can choose a lot of different color themes. So that's Visual Studio Code. There are advantages and disadvantages to it. So for example, this extension we've downloaded is the official extension for Visual Studio Code. However, it won't have like the most bleeding edge features. For example, this does not have remote control. This does not have BTW, which is a new command. I don't think it even has Claude in Chrome extension, like you can't launch it from here. However, Visual Studio Code kind of gives you the best of both worlds because you can just open a terminal in Visual Studio Code. So if you click terminal at the top, new terminal, and then it's going to ask you which project you want to open in. Let's do Playground. So now we have on the left-hand side, this is like basically a Word doc, right, with all the prompts and stuff that I'm reading through. This second tab in the middle is Claude Code using the official Visual Studio Code extension. So let's type that thing again, like analyze my support tickets CSV from downloads. If you absolutely need the terminal, you can also get it within Visual Studio Code here. So the right panel is actually the terminal within Visual Studio Code. So you can type Claude, it's going to launch Claude. And you can see now it looks just like the previous terminal that we had. So you can type whatever here, but it has more commands. So if I type remote control here, for those, we're going to dive into what that is, but it's basically a way to use Claude Code from your phone. So even though you're on your phone, Claude Code can still access everything on your computer. So it's really cool if you step away or whatever, and you can keep working on the same session. But like here in the terminal, you have access to these latest new things, whereas the middle panel, the Claude Code official extension for VS Code, may not have some things yet. So let me just X out of the terminal. So I'm going to stick for now to the official extension. The Claude Code VS Code extension sometimes has weird quirks, or some very rarely freezes and some things like that. And it's honestly kind of a heavy interface if you don't need to heavily review your AI employees' outputs. So like this is great if, like, let's say I'm working on a bunch of content and I want to review the plan, or like it's doing a bunch of competitive research and you want to review the plan so that you can collaborate with Claude Code. It's aware of what files you have open. If I highlight certain lines, it will know. So here I've highlighted 5 lines, and here in Claude Code it says 5 lines selected. Like it's aware of that additional context I've emphasized. Now we're going to talk about memory. Earlier we talked about your Claude.md file, and that's kind of like your instruction manual or playbook for a specific project. So you write it, and it's like telling your AI employee, here's how we do things for this project. It loads automatically every time you start a Claude Code session in that directory. And you can also have a global Claude.md file that's like a meta instruction manual, and it will be applied across all of your projects. So that's one aspect of memory. That's your Claude.md file we previously talked about, though has its own memory, and it's kind of like Claude's personal notebook. It writes it like based on its observations of interacting with you. You can also tell it to remember things. If you want to say like, hey, remember, I prefer short casual emails. My business is a dog walking app. I always sign off with this. And then if you start a new session, then Claude Code should remember it. So it's kind of like ChatGPT memory. So if in ChatGPT, if you say, hey, remember this, it's going to add it to the memory file. So Claude has that as well. For like most people listening to this, I would focus just on continually updating your Claude.md file for your projects to make sure it's like really specific for your project and captures key details and constraints. And then I was hinting at this, but yeah, there's project scope versus global scope. So I'm going to expand the sidebar here. Let me just start with this collapsed. So in the sidebar here, I actually have 2 projects: content, which is like where all my content stuff is, and playground, which is what we made today. So these are 2 separate projects. Each one has its own Claude.md file. So we made this like super basic one for the playground. And then I showed you previously the Claude.md file for content, right? Like really long and specific to my workflow. These Claude.md files are just specific to each project. If you open a Claude Code instance within Playground, it's going to read the Claude.md file for Playground. Like it's not going to read the Claude.md file for your content creation stuff. However, you can have a global Claude.md file, and you can ask Claude to create it and update it as well. So you can say, hey, create a global Claude.md file based on things you've seen me do repeatedly in multiple projects. You don't really need to worry about this when you're just starting out, but I'm just mentioning this since it is a Claude Code concept. And as you have lots of projects, then it will become like more helpful to actually have a global set of rules. If you just have one project, you're just kicking the tires, you're just trying to learn this stuff, then you don't need to worry about like your global rules, right? But as you start getting used to Claude Code and you have 4 different projects now, you may want to refactor your Claude.md to bring up the stuff that is broadly applicable to all the projects. And the thing is, you can ask Claude to do that. You can say, Claude, look at all of my Claude.md files and take the stuff that is present in all of them and apply it to my global Claude.md file. The fun part, finally, we're going to talk about skills. We've already talked about a lot of different built-in commands that come with Claude. So if you just type slash, and this is a nice thing about Visual Studio Code, you can just like scroll down. It's like super nice and readable, right? Compared to the terminal. But yeah, if you type slash, you can see all of the different other options here. One nice thing is to ask Claude, like, hey, what are the most useful slash commands that you think I should use? There's a really fun one called slash insights, which shows you how you've been using Claude Code, what's working, what's not working, and it will give you suggestions for how to update your Claude.md files and scripts and stuff so that you're more productive. This is a brand new one called BTW, by the way. It's not available in the official extension. It's available in the terminal. But let's say Claude is working on a long task and you forgot to supply key pieces of information. You can say slash BTW, use this information as well, and Claude will just absorb it into the current task. So you don't have to interrupt and start over. So there's a lot of cool different slash commands. So just type slash here and you can just like see all of them. Some of these, like TikTok writer, Twitter writer, these are my skills. So I'll talk about next how to make these. Skills is where Claude Code goes from being, oh, this is useful and nice to have, to absolutely mind-blowing. That's definitely the term I hear from most people who get to this point and start building their own skills. A skill, you can think of it as like a 10x more powerful custom GPT. So it's like instructions in a file, but you can chain multiple things together. Like it can really do complex things. What I showed you before, this was the skill I ran. Remember at the very beginning when I ran slash crosspost? These were all the things that one skill was doing. It searched my Google Drive for my latest finished videos. It transcribed the audio locally. I didn't have to pay anything. It matched each video to the topic in my Airtable database just based on the transcript. It read my brand voice rules. It wrote 3 different types of captions for TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, the video platforms, for Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky, and then for Substack. It checked every single caption it wrote through my quality gate, my quality checks. So banned words, em dashes, URLs that don't work, things like that. It showed me everything in a plan that I could approve, then scheduled it. So I just showed it scheduling to TikTok, but normally when I run this skill, it will schedule it to 7 or 8 platforms simultaneously, and then it will update my Airtable with everything it's done. Finally, it will rename the original files. And then the very last step, it launches the Claude and Chrome extension. It opens ManyChat and it creates DM automation templates so that I don't have to sit there and do it manually, because ManyChat does not have an API to allow you to create DM automations. And it'll swap out the keyword, it'll swap out the correct link, etc. And this is all one skill, which is pretty crazy. And it did not take me that long to build, and I'm continuously like refining it. So I just added step 13 DM automations like last weekend, and it works beautifully. But this is like the power of learning skills. So to start, we'll do something like really simple. The skill I'm actually excited to share with you uses an MCP server. So we're going to do that a little bit later when we talk about MCP. So this is a pretty simple skill for now. Okay, so copy this. This will create a skill called weekly recap, and it will read all files modified in the past week, summarize what changed and why, and then draft a short update email in my voice and make it something I'd actually run every Friday. Honestly, it was hard for me to think of an example for like a skill that everybody would find super useful. So if you want to take this to the next level, especially if you've given business context to Claude already, you can literally ask Claude, like, what is the most useful skill you can create for me right now to help with my business? If you haven't given it context on your business, you could add that right now. Ask me clarifying questions about my business before answering. And then I'll show you where skills are structured. So right now it's actually writing the skill MD file. It wrote it in content. I forgot I'm in the content directory, but that's okay. Okay, so just to figure out where it is, this will say playground for you. There's this thing called .claude, and then it will have a directory of skills. And then it just made the weekly recap skill. Boom. Skill.md is the actual skill file. And you can see here what it does. So weekly recap, data collection, it's going to look at my Git log. So Git is like, it's like a floppy disk. It's what allows you to save your work locally on your computer and like version everything so you don't accidentally like delete anything and can't recover it. And then it's going to categorize the changes. It's going to read key files, draft an email in my voice, etc., and different guidelines. Okay, so it created the skill. That's cool. Sometimes you have to refresh Claude Code just to get the skill. I'll just open one really quick. So if you open a new session, you'll see the skill that you just created. So let's just try this skill. So weekly-recap. One thing I want to say for skills is that you can type whatever prompts after. So don't think you just have to like only do this. If you have additional instructions, for example, let's say make this short update, have a bullet point list, you can just type that here. So for my posting skills for content, for example, I'll frequently make weird exceptions, like cross-post everything, but schedule all the news-related videos earlier so that they're more timely. And Claude Code will just figure that out. Like once it has all the transcripts, it will identify which videos are news videos. It's going to queue those videos first in the schedule and then schedule everything else. It's not a news video. It's not like strictly anything. You can type the skill name and then whatever prompts you want, whether it's weird modifications or edge cases, things you want Claude Code to do differently, you can type it after the name of the skill. And follow along. That's honestly my biggest advice for folks, especially non-technical. Like just actually read what Claude is doing because it explains what it's doing step by step. Like, okay, it's reading stuff I've changed in the past week. Like these were all things I made in the past week. Then it wrote a plan.md. By the way, you can click on this, right? This is one of the nice things as well about the official Visual Studio Code extension. You can just like click on stuff. And here is the weekly recap. What's cooking, systems and automation. Are there any questions on skills before we move on? Yeah, so GitHub is actually optional. The website GitHub, and you can save your changes there, but you don't need GitHub. You can actually just use Git locally, the version control system, and that will be enough for Claude Code to understand like what you need it to do. If you say save this, like Claude Code will, use Git appropriately because it knows what to do. How do you download skills into Visual Studio Code? So I was going to get to that at the end. There are lots of projects out there that accumulate or curate a bunch of skills, and you can literally just point at them. You can tell Claude, hey, here's a bunch of skills at this repo, set them up for me. And Claude Code, what it's really doing is like cloning that GitHub repository and setting it up on your computer. But that's probably the easiest way. If for some reason like someone just like sent you a hard-coded skill, you can just add it here. So like add a new folder and then the name of the skill, and then the document that somebody gave you. You can also just tell Claude to do it. Like someone gave me this skill. Let's say it's a file that they gave you. Okay, attach the file, add it to this project or whichever project. So you can just get Claude to do it. This is the biggest shift that's really hard for people. Like when we use ChatGPT, like we don't expect it to do all of this stuff. So we're like, wait, how do I do this next? Or like, what do I have to do? Where do I have to click? What do I have to copy paste? Because we're so used to using ChatGPT. But when you switch to Claude Code, it can like just do all of these things for you. If someone gave you a skill, you can just like drop it in the Claude Code and be like, make a skill out of this. If the skill is on a website, drop the website link and be like, make a skill out of this. You could literally have a thing that says, analyze this YouTube video and then make a skill out of it. There's so many things it can do, but you have to get into that mindset. Okay, so that's skills. We're going to go back to skills after MCP servers. Next is hooks. So the moo sound you hear when my other Claude Code is done, that's a hook running automatically after Claude Code completes. Another example of this is in that cross-post skill for contents. I have a quality gate hook. So every time Claude tries to write or publish a post, the hook automatically intercepts it and checks a lot of stuff. This is just a sample of different things that it checks. For example, punctuation marks that I don't like, banned words, is the caption over the platform's character limits. If I'm posting to Instagram, do I have a video or image that I'm actually posting, etc. I wanted to show you how to set up a hook so you get a notification every time Claude Code actually finishes. So here's the prompt. Screenshot this or copy this. Set up a hook so my Mac sends me a desktop notification every time you finish a long task. I want to hear a sound when you're done so I don't need to watch the screen. If I type this, I think it will tell me I already have one. Claude said, oh, you already have the hook set up, which I do. So my hook is show a macOS desktop notification. You guys probably don't see it because it's in my other monitor, but like if you get an app notification in the top right corner, that's what it says, Claude Code finished, and then it plays a moo sound at 46% volume. So if you run this prompt, it's going to ask you like, hey, what should the notification be? What should the sound be? And you can just follow along with that. and then set it up. So this is a really fun hook. So there's all kinds of different hooks that you can create. And the nice thing about hooks is you don't have to remember to run them. Like they will just happen. Every time Claude Code finishes running, it just makes a moo sound. I don't have to like tell it to do that. It just happens. Okay, section 8, connecting Claude to the real world, for example, web browsing. Honestly, you don't actually have to do anything here. I'm just explaining that Claude Code has access to the internet. So you'll see tool calls like web fetch or web search. To do this really quick, you can copy this prompt. You can create any variation. Honestly, this prompt says like read my website, analyze pricing, and then analyze a bunch of competitors as well. And all I'm showcasing here is that Claude can access the internet. You'll see the tool call name. So web fetch means it's fetching from this particular website. It decided to use Perplexity next because I do have a global Claude preference to use Perplexity, and that's it. If you just tell it to go to the internet and do any kind of research or research trending news, it's going to use the web. Now we're at the MCP section. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. In plain English, it's the bridge between Claude Code and the actual tools you use every day, whether that's Gmail, Airtable, Notion, N8N, Intercom, Slack, Stripe, Perplexity, like whatever it is. Claude can basically manipulate those apps just like a user would, just like an employee would. So imagine like you hired someone and you told them, make sure you research YouTubers and then log your research into Airtable, like, oh, this YouTube influencer, and then send me an update in Slack. Like Claude Code can do that once you connect to the tools that it needs access to. In that particular case, something to search YouTube, web fetch can do that, Perplexity MCP can do that, Apify MCP can do that, then the Airtable connector, then the Slack connector. Without MCP, it's back to chat. It's back to ChatGPT saying like, go do it yourself. So, and that was like the way we used AI, right? For the initial 2-3 years ChatGPT came out, like ChatGPT told us what to do, but we still had to go do it. The difference here is Claude Code, once you set up tools, it can go do it for you. It will think and dynamically plan. It'll analyze your request like, oh, okay, Sabrina's telling me to go do this. What tools do I need to utilize to accomplish the task that she set me to do? So as an example, I'm just referring to the cross-post skill. So it's like the consistent example throughout. It uses 3 different MCP connections. So Airtable, like I said, I'm literally too lazy to rename my videos. I just like film them and then drop them, and they all have the same name. So it's like copy 1, copy 2, copy 3, but Claude transcribes it, checks it against Airtable, figures out which video it is, and then updates the record and updates the file name. So I have a clean file name in my Google Drive. It has a Blotato MCP connection to publish to the social platforms, and it has a Google Drive connection to find and download the videos that I've done. And Claude talks directly to these tools. What happens is like for each tool, there's a description of when to use this tool. So given your prompt or instruction, Claude will dynamically plan and decide which tools make sense for the task. So now what we're going to do is connect our first MCP server. So we're going to say Airtable. Walk me through adding Airtable step by step. Okay. And then by the way, to see which MCP servers you have, just type /MCP and you'll see like a list like this. It's probably empty if you're brand new to this stuff. But yeah, let's try this. Help me connect my first MCP server. Walk me through adding Airtable step by step. So I'll do at least the most annoying part because everybody asks like, well, how do you do the first step? So I'm literally just following it. Go to airtable.com/create/token. So let's just go there. Go to this website. Create a personal access token with the scopes you need. Okay, token's name, let's call this live stream so I remember to delete it. Okay, it says with the scopes you need. If you don't understand what that means, just ask. Just like, which scopes do I need? And then here are the scopes. For Airtable, it's typically records read, records write, and then schema bases. So in Airtable, a base is like a database. I don't typically give it access to list or create comments. And then the next step is Create token. So this is your token. So what you're going to do is copy this somewhere because you won't be able to copy it again in many cases. Add it to Claude JSON. Can you install it? Here's my API key. So I already have Airtable MCP, okay? But the next step would have been to just do this. So open this file and add an entry. And again, you can tell Claude to do this. You can just be like, well, do step 3. The secure thing to do would be to open the file afterwards and then paste your API key in, right? So that you're not like just sending it to Claude Code. But if you're totally non-technical and this is already overwhelming, just be like, okay, just put my API key in there and paste it there. And then the last thing you'll need to do is restart. So MCP servers are loaded when the conversation loads. So you just need to restart your Claude Code session. And then to check that it works, you would just do /MCP and you would see it's in the list. So here I have Airtable connected. And that is the general process for setting up MCP. Some MCP servers do have easier ways to install them, but they usually make it really obvious. So for example, in Blotato, literally it says, if you're using Blotato in Claude Code or Cowork, copy the setup command. Like you just click the button and then you paste it in the terminal and then that's it. It's going to set everything up. I've noticed a lot more tools are coming out with this. So like look for that if they just have a simple one-line command. Okay. There are really cool things that it can do. So let's do like short form, say research recent AI news and add 3 ideas to my Airtable short form. This is cool. So Claude Code is asking me to use this skill called /ideas. And to give it permission, you could say yes. Number 2 will always allow this for this project, so you don't have to allow it every single time, okay? Or you could say no, obviously, to deny it. Okay, so it's done. So Claude Code found 3 different ideas. It basically analyzed all that and gave me 3 content ideas for tomorrow with the scripts and with the hooks and everything. So like I did not actually have to do anything in Airtable, right? That is the beauty of MCP. Let's say update everything that's to do to ready state. Okay, so in real time, you're watching Claude Code like interact and use the apps you use. This is why I say like Claude Code, honestly, 6 months ago was the first time I really felt like it was a mini AI employee. Because again, imagine what you tell a person, like you've just hired a person, maybe they're helping you out with social media management. You tell them, well, research these ideas. These are the things that have done well in the past. This is our brand voice. This is the type of content we want to make. Maybe rank ideas by virality score. After you film the content or create a visual, which you can also use AI for, clean it up, clean up our database where we have all the content, schedule it out for the week, create DM automations with ManyChat so people get our lead magnets. Like you would have a person and you would tell them to do all this. You would write a Google Doc playbook or SOP step by step of what they're supposed to do, and then update Airtable with everything when you're done. Like Claude Code can do all of that now. Like it's pretty crazy. Like this is just one simple example, but I wanted to show Airtable because like almost everybody uses some kind of light database, whether it's Google Sheets, Airtable, or if you have your own CRM. Throughout this live stream, I've often talked about like Perplexity MCP. I personally think Perplexity MCP is like vastly superior when it comes to research. It's like I use it all the time instead of Claude's native internet research capabilities. Obviously, this is optional and it requires like a Perplexity API account. So if you don't have budget, like skip this step. But I personally think it's worth it. Like it really elevates the quality of research you're able to do with Claude Code. So in perplexity.ai, you will have to go to account API billing, add your card, and then add it here. And this is where you'd create your API key, right? Just like we did before. Remember, it's the same process for hooking up MCP. Go to the app, create API key, copy paste API key, and then just ask Claude to add the MCP server. Perplexity, I think, has a super easy way to add it. It's like MCP add Perplexity. But just ask Claude and it'll walk you through it step by step. So once you add Perplexity MCP, then we're going to create a skill called fact check. So I use this all the time. Create a skill called fact check. It should read whatever contents I'm writing, go line by line, and use Perplexity MCP to find primary sources backing every claim, flag anything unverified, and and each claim gets a verdict, confirmed, unverified, or wrong, with source citations. I use this all the time, obviously, for content creation, but this is incredibly useful as well for any type of research, competitive analysis, drafting any types of reports that are based on internet information, because like Perplexity is just really, really awesome at that. Okay, so the skill is done. Let's take a look at it. On the left hand, go here, and then it just created a new fact check skill here. And here's the new skill. Fact check categories, different categories. I already actually have the skill, so I don't know if it updated it at all, but hopefully yours will look similar. And then all you have to do to run it is just type, remember to reload the Claude Code session, and then all you have to do to run it is type /fact check. So how do I actually use this? So lately, if you've seen my YouTube, I've been doing more like news research type of videos. So I have a skill here for YouTube news research. So this will like heavily do a ton of research on a news story. This is like almost 1,000 lines in this skill. And then it will create an outline for my video. And then I will run fact check like again and again on the outline to make sure that everything I'm saying in the video has at least a primary source. I'll mention a couple MCP servers as well that I like, so just in case people are curious. Obviously, Blotato MCP, this is for scraping content. You can scrape YouTube, TikTok videos, PDFs, audio files. I can generate visuals as well, like, I don't know why, but my anime infographics on LinkedIn are doing quite well. And then it can obviously schedule and publish to social media platforms. Airtable is the one I showed you. I use this all the time. Apify is really awesome. There are alternatives to this that work just as well, but you want at least one tool that has access to lots of different scrapers. So Apify can scrape YouTube videos, it can scrape Instagram accounts, like it can get all the stats, it can get Alex Hormozy's most viral tweets, like it'll just use Apify. Apify is a marketplace of scrapers. It'll find the appropriate scraper for the task and then just do it. So highly recommend this. Intercom is what I use for my product's help chat. So I use Intercom MCP to help me like analyze support conversations and figure out gaps in my support docs and how to improve it. And then I mentioned earlier N8N MCP. This one is honestly game changing. Like I personally think Claude Code plus N8N is like the superhero setup when it comes to operations and running a business, because Claude Code right now really sucks at orchestration. So scheduling workflows, having different triggers, being able to see all the execution logs, handling permissions. N8N has already figured all of that out and has a bunch of integrations with third-party tools. So I use N8N MCP. Claude Code uses it to like create and fix all of my N8N automations. I also use N8N as a credential store, meaning I can connect lots of different accounts, and Claude Code can access the API keys safely and just write custom HTTP calls. Let's say a thing doesn't have an MCP server, but it has an API and it has a connector with N8N. I just like authenticate with N8N, and then Claude Code can just write an HTTP call to that service's API without having to like install anything else. Like it already has my API key from N8N. Next section, subagents. Okay, subagents are basically like parallel employees. So imagine 5 different employees. In the crossbow skill that I frequently talk about, it actually spins up an agent to handle each video. And that agent is responsible for transcribing the video, matching it to the corresponding Airtable record, coming up with the captions for that video, and scheduling that video. So it's actually different agents, and it just works a little bit faster because everything's in parallel. So instead of one video at a time, next video, third video, we have multiple agents working simultaneously. So to see this in action, this is optional, but just to see what I mean, this prompt says, I need you to deeply research 5 different companies. For each company, spawn a separate agent that visits their website. I'm explicit here saying spawn a separate agent. However, in many cases, Claude Code will just do it for you based on the complexity of your task. But here you can see agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, agent 4, agent 5, and they're all working in parallel. So you don't have to like do one at a time, then the next one. So it frees up a lot of time, and it's really great for parallelizable tasks. Remote control is probably my favorite new Claude Code feature. So basically we can start a Claude Code session like this on our computer, and then we can continue it on our phone. And It's not like the ChatGPT on your phone where you only talk. It has access to everything on your computer. So let's say you have a bunch of files in a local folder in your computer. You can tell Claude Code from your phone, like, go analyze all these files and make a report. You can be anywhere and it will do it. So to enable remote control, I think it's terminal only. So again, we're in the Claude Code Chrome extension. But if you go back to the terminal we had open here, right? Like this terminal here, remotes dash control, you'll see it here. And it says connect this terminal for remote control session. So go ahead and do that. And then that's the session. So make sure you have the Claude app downloaded. Okay. And then go to the Claude app. In the left sidebar, click code. And then you're going to see like a bunch of your sessions. The top section shows the sessions that are currently in progress. So click on that one. Okay, so now I see it here. So I see everything that is also in the screen and session here. So here I just typed from my phone, analyze CSV in downloads, right? And now you can see on my screen, the session is updated in real time and it's doing it. So these things are totally synced. So I can take the dog for a walk. I can just sit on the toilet and just like control this Claude Code session. And you can control multiple Claude Code sessions. So this is a really, really, really neat feature. A lot of people coming from OpenClaw are realizing like, wow, I can pretty much have OpenClaw, but it works way better if I use Claude Code and remote control. And then you'll see everything here. So if Claude Code gets stuck needing your permission, you'll see a request like, hey, can I get your permission? And then you can accept it here. And so this is probably my favorite feature that Claude Code has recently introduced. And if you haven't set it up, just make sure you download the Claude mobile app and make sure you download the correct one with millions of downloads. Just remember to enable remote control. So on the bottom right corner, it says remote control active right here. Okay, so you want to look for that, make sure it's active. And then if you want to like unwind it, just do remote control again. You can show QR code if you're having trouble connecting on your phone. This will show the QR code so you can try again or disconnect the session. So now I just disconnected it. So yeah, that's probably my favorite feature that's been released recently. Another one that's pretty cool too, but still limited is called scheduled tasks. N8N is still much stronger for scheduled tasks compared to Claude Code, but Claude Code is starting to come out with some of the basics. So if you do /loop, so /loop our check if any new files were added to my Google Drive. So just type that in here. And now Claude Code is basically going to create a recurring task that triggers every single hour, and it's going to check if new files were added to the Google Drive. So you can see it here. This is the summary, okay? However, this only works if Claude Code is actually open and your laptop is on. So if you close the session or your laptop is sleeping, this won't run. The other limitation right now is these scheduled tasks expire after 3 days. So compared to N8N, where it's like a stable recurring workflow, this is still a little bit limited. For permanent recurring tasks, you would have to use Claude Code Desktop, but that has many other limitations. So I personally just don't touch Claude Code Desktop. I find it pretty frustrating. But yeah, this is a cool new feature. And if you're not sure like what tasks are scheduled, you can just ask like what tasks are scheduled, and Claude Code will list the ones you have scheduled. If you want to remove them from your schedule, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, and then the very last thing I'll talk about is version control. So all this means is you may have heard of Git or GitHub. So Git version control is local on your computer. GitHub is a cloud-based service that is optional. You don't actually need it. It allows you to save your work online, and that's really useful for collaborating with other people. So if I had other people, then we could collaborate on this content project, for example. But most people listening to this just stick to version control locally with Git. And Claude is already aware of everything. So if you just like copy paste this prompt, save all the changes we've made today as a new version with a description of what changed, it just like knows what to do. Like, so I don't actually want it to do it, but here you can see it's already using Git. So when you say anything like save this, it's going to know that. I do recommend like asking Claude how to use Git. So just say like, I'm non-technical. What are the simplest things I should know about using Git. Because you can do things like create a branch if you're about to make lots of changes, but you don't want to like ruin or mess up your main version. So you create a branch and then you can play around there. And only if you like the changes, then you can merge it back to your main project. That way you can like freely experiment with stuff and not worry about messing up your saved work. So here, Claude will walk you through it. So 4 things you need to know. Here's the flow, by 9% of the time, etc. So that was it. So we covered 30 different concepts in this 2-hour session, from super beginner to, I would say, like intermediate level. In terms of where to start, if you have been overwhelmed by this session, I would say don't learn all 30 at once. I really tried to order it roughly from kind of very beginner, intermediate, and then more intermediate. So this is kind of a roadmap if you just like were completely overwhelmed by the session. I would suggest just like in your first week, like installing it, give it a file, watch what it can do, like just ask about all the different things it can do. Maybe create a CLAUDE.md file with a couple of rules for your main project. Maybe switch modes between plan mode and stuff. Then learn how to like switch between different models, set up memory, etc. Maybe install Visual Studio Code. And then once you're like kind of comfortable interacting with Claude in Visual Studio Code or the terminal, then get into the meatier stuff like building your own skills, connecting your MCP servers, creating more complex skills that use your MCP servers, right? Remote control is really fun. Setting up Git, you will regret it if you don't set up some kind of version control. And then you can continuously check your insights to see what's working well, what's not working. And Claude will literally recommend like, hey, I think we should make a skill because you keep doing this thing repeatedly. So if you run /insights like once a week or something, it will do that for you automatically. And then the last thing I'll end on is there's lots of repositories of pre-built skills. So I think this is Anthropic's official skills, right? So there's a bunch of skills here as examples, say like brand guidelines skill. And then there's this one, awesome Claude Code, and then this one, Claude skills. I will drop these links in the newsletter in a couple of days, but it's just cool here to see like what other skills that people use. So this is probably the one I recommend a lot of people start with. So it has a lot of different skills just organized by like what you're trying to do. Like even if something simple as downloading a video, like it has a skill which will call this script to download a YouTube video. It's just really handy skills and utilities. Enhance images, organize your files, all content related skills. Like this is a content research writer, right? Like boom, super detailed. So this is a really nice one just to like browse people's skills. In order to get the skills yourself, you can actually just take this link, so this GitHub link, and then drop it into Claude Code and be like, clone this project on my computer, and you will instantly get all of the skills. Now, it might be intimidating because there's like so many skills. So a follow-up question to ask Claude might be, what are the 3 most relevant skills from this project for me based on everything you know about me? And then Claude Code's going to analyze all these hundreds of skills and be like, you should start with these 3. I think we're done now. Okay, well, thanks everybody for watching.